I'm Michelle, and I never thought my life could unravel in a single night. Picture this: a quiet suburban home, the kind where laughter and love are supposed to reign, now heavy with a secret that burns in my chest. For 14 years, I've built a world with David, a man whose steady heart anchored me through every storm, until I let temptation creep in like a thief in the dark. One fleeting moment, a dangerous spark with faces I trusted, turned my safe haven into a battlefield of guilt and betrayal. My heart races even now, haunted by the look in David's eyes when he saw the truth. How did I let it come to this? And can I ever mend what I've shattered? Stick around, because what happened next will leave you speechless. Picture this: a faint hum of crickets outside my window, the kind of sound that wraps around you like a familiar blanket on a cool evening. I'm sitting here in the dim glow of my living room lamp, a glass of untouched wine on the coffee table, and my thoughts are racing faster than I can keep up with. My name's Michelle. I'm 34, and I've got a story that's been clawing at me from the inside, begging to be let out. I've been married to David for 14 years now. 14 years of building a life together in this quiet suburban pocket just outside Chicago. Our home is a modest 2-story with a neat little yard, the kind of place where you wave to neighbors over the fence and pretend you don't notice their curious glances. David's 37, a steady guy with a heart bigger than he lets on, working long hours as a project manager to keep our world spinning. We've had our share of storms, sure, but we've always found a way to patch up the cracks and keep moving forward. I work part-time as a freelance graphic designer, which means I get to set my own hours and keep our home running smoothly. It's not glamorous, but it's mine. Sitting at my desk with a cup of coffee, tweaking logos and layouts while the world outside hums along. David and I, we've carved out a comfortable rhythm, the kind of life that feels safe, predictable. And then there are Ryan and Ethan, David's closest buddies, who've been part of our circle for as long as I can remember. Ryan's 35, a mechanic with a laugh that fills up a room before he even finishes his first sentence. He's the kind of guy who's always got a story or a quip, hands stained with grease but a grin that makes you forget the mess. Ethan, on the other hand, is 33, a software developer who's quieter, more in his head. He's got this dry humor that sneaks up on you, and half the time I catch him staring off into space like he's solving some puzzle no one else can see. The four of us, we've spent so many nights together over the years. Backyard barbecues with the smell of grilled burgers in the air, or just kicking back with a few beers on the porch, talking about nothing and everything. Those moments, they've been the glue of our little group. The kind of memories you don't think twice about until something shifts. Wednesdays, though, they're usually quiet for David and me. It's our midweek breather, a night to unwind with a movie or just sit in comfortable silence. But this past Wednesday, something felt off. I can't explain it, not really. But there was this undercurrent, a tension humming beneath the surface like static before a storm. I noticed it in the way David kept glancing at his phone, in the way the air seemed heavier, thicker, as if it knew something I didn't. I remember that Wednesday evening so vividly, the way the day seemed to stretch on forever until David finally walked through the door around 6 p.m. I could see the exhaustion etched into the lines of his face, but there was a lightness in his step, a small smile tugging at his lips as he dropped his bag by the entryway. He looked over at me in the kitchen and said, "Hey babe, Ryan and Ethan are swinging by for a few drinks tonight. Figured we could all use a break after this week?" I nodded, already pulling out a bag of chips and some dip from the pantry, my hands moving on autopilot as I started prepping a little spread. I grabbed a block of cheddar, slicing it up alongside some crackers, arranging everything on a plate while the faint scent of salty snacks filled the air. Meanwhile, David was in the living room, setting up a small cooler with a stash of cold beers, the clink of glass bottles echoing softly as he worked. By 7 p.m., the doorbell rang, and the house came alive with the sound of booming voices. Ryan and Ethan barreled in, their laughter bouncing off the walls as they greeted David with hearty slaps on the back. I peeked out from the kitchen, catching sight of Ryan in his faded flannel shirt, the sleeves rolled up to his elbows, his boots still caked with dust from the garage. Ethan trailed behind, looking more subdued in a plain gray hoodie, a six-pack tucked under his arm as his contribution to the night. I finished up with the snacks and carried the tray into the living room, settling onto the couch next to David. The four of us fell into an easy rhythm, chatting about the usual stuff, how work was dragging us all down, the latest football game that had Ryan practically jumping out of his seat with commentary, and vague plans for the weekend that none of us were really committed to yet. The atmosphere was warm, familiar, with the soft strum of classic rock drifting from David's old stereo in the corner, filling the spaces between our words. I cracked open a light beer, the cool liquid sliding down my throat, and felt a gentle warmth spread through me as the night wore on. After an hour or so, we'd all had a couple of drinks, and the conversation grew louder, more animated. Ryan, as usual, took center stage, spinning wild tales about his latest car repair disasters, his hands gesturing wildly as he described a particularly stubborn engine that just wouldn't cooperate. I couldn't help but laugh, the sound bubbling up from somewhere deep, a sense of camaraderie wrapping around us like a cozy blanket. But as the laughter faded, I glanced over at David and noticed his eyes growing heavy, a yawn escaping him despite his best efforts to hide it. I could tell the long day was catching up with him, the weight of it pulling at his shoulders. Around 9 p.m. he finally gave in, pushing himself up from the couch with a tired smile. "I've got an early meeting tomorrow," he said, his voice rough with sleep. I watched David shuffle down the hallway, his footsteps fading as he disappeared into our bedroom. A part of me wanted to follow, to curl up beside him and let the night end there, but I knew the guys would stick around a little longer. So I sighed, pushed myself off the couch, and headed to the kitchen to start cleaning up. The living room was still buzzing with Ryan and Ethan's low voices, their conversation a quiet murmur over the faint hum of the stereo playing some old rock tune. I started stacking empty beer cans into a recycling bag, the aluminum clinking softly with each addition. Then I moved to the sink, rinsing out glasses, the warm water running over my hands as I scrubbed a plate, my mind drifting. The kitchen was dimly lit, just the overhead light above the sink casting a soft yellowish glow across the counter. I was lost in thought, replaying the night, the laughter, the odd tension I couldn't quite shake. Then I heard it. Footsteps behind me, slow and deliberate, like someone was taking their time. My heart skipped a beat, but I didn't think much of it at first. I figured it was David, maybe coming back for a glass of water or just to check if I was okay. A small smile crept onto my face as I kept my hands in the soapy water, not turning around just yet. "Couldn't sleep, huh?" I said lightly, expecting to hear his familiar chuckle. But there was no answer. Instead, I felt the warmth of hands resting lightly on my hips, a touch that sent a jolt through me. My breath caught in my throat, and I turned my head just enough to glimpse who it was, expecting to see David's tired eyes. But I froze. It wasn't him. It was Ryan. His gaze was intense, piercing, a smirk playing on his lips as he leaned in closer, his breath hot against my ear. I could smell the faint mix of beer and his cologne, a rugged, earthy scent that made my head spin. I was stunned, my hands still submerged in the sudsy water, unsure whether to pull away or say something. Anything. My mind screamed at me to step back, to stop this before it went any further, but my body didn't move. Before I could make sense of what was happening, a surge of adrenaline hit me, a dangerous mix of fear and something else, something I didn't want to name. In a moment of reckless abandon, I reached down, placing his hands more firmly on my waist, guiding him as if I'd lost all control. My voice came out as barely a whisper, trembling with the weight of what I was doing. "Not here," I said, the words slipping out before I could stop them. We moved silently, almost instinctively, toward the bathroom at the far end of the house, the room farthest from where David was sleeping. Every step felt heavier, like I was walking straight into a betrayal I couldn't undo, yet I couldn't stop myself. My heart pounded so hard I thought it might burst, each beat echoing in my ears like a drum. As we slipped inside the small tiled space, the cool air hit my skin, a stark contrast to the heat building inside me. I barely had time to process it before I heard another set of footsteps. My stomach dropped. Ethan had followed us, his expression unreadable, but his presence charged with something unspoken, something electric. The door clicked shut behind us, sealing us in that cramped, dimly lit room. The tension exploded like a dam breaking. Ryan's hands were on my waist again, pulling me closer, while Ethan stepped in, his fingers brushing the back of my neck, sending shivers down my spine. He leaned in, his lips grazing the sensitive skin just below my ear, a touch that made my knees weak. I was caught between them, my mind racing with guilt, screaming at me to stop, to think of David asleep just down the hall. But my body betrayed me, responding in ways I couldn't control, drawn to the heat, the danger of it all. The cool tile pressed against my back as I leaned into the wall, the smooth surface grounding me, even as everything else spun out of control. I'm still reeling as I stand here in this cramped bathroom, the cool tile against my back, the only thing keeping me tethered to reality. My heart is hammering so hard I can barely hear anything else, just the rush of blood in my ears and the uneven breaths filling the tiny space. Ryan's hands are still on my waist, his grip firm but not forceful, like he's waiting for me to decide what happens next. Ethan's presence is just as intense, his fingers lingering near my shoulder now, a ghost of a touch that sends sparks skittering across my skin. I'm caught in this storm of guilt and desire, my mind a chaotic mess of what I should do versus what I want in this fleeting, reckless moment. Every second feels like it's stretching into eternity. The air thick with unspoken tension, the kind that could ignite with the smallest spark. I'm losing myself in the haze, in the heat of their closeness, when suddenly the world screeches to a halt. There's a sound, a slow, agonizing creak that cuts through the fog in my head like a knife. My breath catches, and I freeze, my eyes darting toward the bathroom door. It's opening, inch by inch, the hinges groaning as if they're mocking me, dragging out the inevitable. My heart stops dead in my chest as a silhouette appears, framed by the dim hallway light spilling in. It's David. My David. His face is a mask of pure shock, his eyes wide, almost unblinking, as if his brain can't process the scene before him. His mouth is slightly open, like he's about to speak, but the words are stuck somewhere deep inside. I can see the exact moment the realization hits him, the way his expression shifts from confusion to something raw, something broken. I yank myself away from Ryan and Ethan in an instant, my hands trembling uncontrollably as I step forward, my voice cracking under the weight of my panic. David, I can explain, I stammer, but the words feel hollow, useless, like they're crumbling before they even leave my lips. Ryan takes a step back, his hand rubbing the back of his neck in that awkward way he does when he's caught off guard, his eyes darting anywhere but at David. Ethan just stares at the floor, his jaw tight, avoiding all contact as if looking up might make this nightmare more real. I can feel the heat of shame burning my cheeks, my stomach twisting into knots so tight I think I might be sick. I want to disappear, to rewind time, to be anywhere but here under the weight of David's gaze. He doesn't say anything at first. He just stands there, rooted to the spot, his breathing heavy and ragged, each exhale sounding like it's being dragged out of him. I can see his fists clenched at his sides, the knuckles whitening under the strain, and it's like I can feel the hurt radiating off him in waves. His eyes, those warm, familiar eyes I've looked into 1,000 times, are now sharp with betrayal, cutting deeper than I ever thought possible. I've seen him angry before, frustrated, even disappointed, but never like this. Never with this kind of pain etched into every line of his face, like I've shattered something inside him that might never be whole again. My mind is racing, scrambling for excuses, for anything I can say to undo what he's just seen, but nothing comes. Every thought feels inadequate, every word too small to bridge the chasm I've just created. The silence in the bathroom is suffocating, pressing down on us like a physical weight. The faint hum of the house, the distant tick of a clock, the soft buzz of a light fixture, feels deafening in the absence of words. We're all frozen, statues in this tiny tiled prison, waiting for someone, anyone, to break the stillness. I can feel the sweat beating on my forehead, my palms clammy as I clench and unclench my hands, desperate for a way out of this moment. I want to reach for David, to touch him, to pull him back to me, but the space between us feels like an ocean, vast and uncrossable. My legs feel weak, like they might give out beneath me. I'm sitting here in the living room now, the weight of what just happened pressing down on me like a physical force. The air is so thick with tension I can barely breathe, every creak of the house sounding like a judgment. David is in his recliner across from me, his face a stone wall, hard and unreadable, though I can see the storm brewing behind his eyes. I'm on the couch, flanked by Ryan and Ethan, who both look like they'd rather sink into the floor than be here. The stereo that was playing those old rock tunes earlier is off now, and the silence is deafening, amplifying every tiny sound. The tick of the clock on the mantel, the faint rustle of fabric as someone shifts uncomfortably. My hands are clasped tight in my lap, fingers digging into my palms, as if the pain might anchor me to something real, something other than this nightmare I've created. David breaks the silence first, his voice low and steady, but there's a raw edge to it, a pain that cuts right through me. How could you, Michelle? And you two? My best friends? Each word lands like a blow, heavy with betrayal, and I feel my chest tighten, tears pricking at the corners of my eyes. I open my mouth to respond, but my throat feels like it's closing up, the weight of my guilt choking me. Finally, I manage to stammer out, "David, I'm so sorry. It was a mistake, a terrible, stupid mistake. I let myself get caught up in the moment, with the drinks and bad judgment. I never meant to hurt you." My voice cracks on the last word, and I hate how hollow my excuse sounds, even to my own ears. It's the truth, but it feels like a flimsy shield against the damage I've done. Ryan shifts beside me, his head bowed, and mumbles, "Man, I'm sorry too. I got carried away, lost my head. It wasn't right." His usual bravado is gone, replaced by a quiet shame that hangs heavy in the air. Ethan, on the other hand, doesn't even try to speak at first. He just nods slightly, his eyes fixed on the carpet, unable to meet David's gaze. After a long, agonizing pause, he mutters, "Yeah, same. I don't even know what to say. I messed up." Their apologies feel like whispers against the roar of David's hurt, and I can see it in the way his jaw clenches, the way his hands grip the arms of the recliner like he's holding himself together by sheer will. David listens, his face still a mask of control, but I can see the battle raging inside him. His eyes flicker with a mix of anger and anguish, and I wonder if he's replaying the moment he walked in on us, that awful scene in the bathroom where everything fell apart. My stomach twists at the memory of his expression, the way his world seemed to shatter right in front of me. I want to reach out, to bridge the gap between us, but I'm terrified he'll pull away, that I've lost the right to even try. The silence stretches on, an eternity in every second, and I feel the tears spill over, hot and unstoppable, tracing paths down my cheeks. I don't wipe them away. I don't deserve to hide how broken I feel right now. After what feels like forever, David leans forward, his elbows resting on his knees, his hands clasped tightly together. When he speaks, his voice is quieter, but there's a resolve in it that makes my breath catch. "I don't know if I can trust any of you again. Not after this. But Michelle, I've spent 14 years with you. 14 years of building a life, of choosing each other over and over. I'm not ready to throw that away over one night, no matter how much it hurts." My heart leaps, a wild mix of relief and disbelief surging through me. I blink through the tears, searching his face for any sign that he means it, that there's really a chance to salvage what we had. He continues, his gaze steady but heavy. "We need to talk." After David's words hung in the air a fragile thread of hope amidst the wreckage, I felt the weight of the moment shift. Ryan and Ethan, sensing the conversation was no longer theirs to be part of, stood up almost in unison. Their movements were slow, hesitant, as if they were unsure whether leaving was the right thing to do. Ryan muttered something about giving us space, his voice barely above a whisper, while Ethan just nodded, his eyes still avoiding David's. I watched them shuffle toward the door, the sound of their footsteps fading as they stepped out into the cool night air. The door clicked shut behind them, and suddenly it was just David and me, the silence between us both a comfort and a chasm. We moved to the couch together, sitting side by side, though there was still a careful distance between our bodies. The clock on the mantel ticked on, marking the late hour, but neither of us seemed to care. We sat there until the early hours of the morning, the dim light of the living room lamp casting soft shadows across the walls. I took a deep breath, feeling the weight of everything I needed to say pressing against my chest. David, I felt so overlooked lately, I admitted, my voice trembling with the raw honesty of it. I know that's no excuse for what I did, none at all, but I've been carrying this loneliness, and I didn't know how to tell you. My words felt like they were spilling out, messy and unpolished, but I couldn't stop them. I needed him to understand, even if it didn't erase the hurt. He looked at me then, really looked at me, and I saw the pain still lingering in his eyes, but also something softer, something like understanding. He let out a long sigh, running a hand through his hair before speaking. I've been so wrapped up in work, Michelle. The stress, the deadlines, it's pulled me away from you, and I didn't even realize how far I drifted. I'm sorry for that. His voice cracked, and I saw tears glisten in his eyes, mirroring my own. We reached for each other almost instinctively, our hands finding one another, and as we held on, the tears came freely. We cried together, the kind of deep, aching release that comes from years of unspoken frustrations finally breaking free. In that moment, we made a promise, to try harder, to not let the distance grow again, to fight for what we'd built over all these years. The days that followed were heavy with the aftermath, but they also carried a strange sense of purpose. David and I made the decision to start couples counseling, something I never imagined we'd need. I remember sitting in the waiting room for our first session, the beige walls and generic artwork doing little to ease my nerves. My stomach churned with a mix of dread and hope as we waited for our names to be called. But as the sessions went on, I started to see the value in them. We learned to talk in ways we hadn't in years, peeling back layers of resentment and misunderstanding that had built up like dust on forgotten shelves. It wasn't easy. There were moments when old wounds reopened, when the memory of that night in the bathroom loomed over us like a dark cloud. But we faced it together, and that made all the difference. Ryan and Ethan kept their distance during this time, and I was grateful for it. Their absence allowed David and me to focus on rebuilding without the constant reminder of their role in our pain. I could tell David hadn't fully forgiven them, and I wasn't sure if he ever would. His trust in them had been shattered, and while he didn't speak of it often, I saw the flicker of anger in his eyes whenever their names came up in passing. For now, though, he was pouring his energy into us, into mending the cracks I'd caused, and I clung to that with everything I had. As I sit here now, reflecting on my actions, the guilt still gnaws at me. It's a quiet, persistent ache, a reminder of the line I crossed and the hurt I inflicted on the person I love most. I replay that night over and over. Don't forget to subscribe, like, and comment if you enjoyed this story. This will help us create more engaging stories for you.